Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. Each episode will bring you in-depth discussion with experts, community leaders, and analysts who will share their insights, experiences, and predictions. From local elections to global diplomacy, we'll provide you with the tools and perspectives you'll need to navigate today's real-world landscape.
Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. I am Lisa Chafee. Joining me this afternoon is Brendan Shea, who is wearing many hats these days. His personal business is a financial advisor. He's married with 7 children and is currently serving on the State Board of Education since was elected in November of 2020, and just recently was elected as county commissioner for Madison County. Brendan, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Lisa.
So we have a lot of things that I want to talk to you about. First, let's touch on what you have done at the State Board of Education. That's been a hot mess lately. A lot of changes going on. Thank you for being such a staunch advocate for students and for parents. You've accomplished quite a bit there. But like I said, there's been some changes with the passing of SB1, which now we have the cabinet level position under the governor. What has that done to the State Board of Education?
Sure. So SB1 was originally introduced, and then that was rolled into House Bill 33, which was the budget last summer. And so that went into effect this past October. And essentially what that did was it created a new education department called the Department of Education and Workforce Development, which replaced the old ODE, the old Ohio Department of Education. It created this new department, which included workforce development, removed it out from the purview of the State Board of Education, and put it under the purview of a cabinet level appointee. So the governor has a cabinet level appointee that oversees this new agency, and they now do essentially 90% of what the State Board of Education used to do. And that includes coming up with state standards, model curriculum, the state report card, overseeing schools and issuing those report cards, overseeing academic distress commissions, implementing essentially any regulation that would be in response to legislation passed by the General Assembly. What we retain as a State Board of Education, we're still a constitutional body, came into existence when the voters passed a referendum in 1953. So we still do territory transfers. So if there's a section of a school district that is seeking to move to another school district, that's still in our responsibility. Teacher discipline, so that's still in our responsibility. Voting on licensure, things of that nature. And then all regulations that pertain to teachers and teacher licensure. So it's still an important role, but it's a much reduced role than what the State Board used to have. And the last thing I should add is in the law that was passed, there's still a role named in the law for the State Board to give advice and consent to this new department as far as education policy. So that's something that we still have an ability to do.
Okay. So you're not totally neutered. You still have a good bit that's very important, that sounds like.
Right. Yeah, that last piece that I mentioned, I think it kind of keeps the door open for the State Board, which, is a 19-member board, 8 of which are appointed, but 11 are elected. So these are the folks when someone in a district has a problem and they think, okay, who do I get to on education policy at the state level? Obviously, their legislators are going to be someone that they are going to think about going to and probably should. But the elected state board members are still going to be someone that I think people would think about and would contact. We still have our monthly meetings. Folks can come and participate in the public meeting, and we can still chime in, pass resolutions. Our findings can go to the legislature, the General Assembly, to the new department as well. So yeah, there's still an important role.
Well, speaking of resolutions, I had the opportunity to come testify at the State Board of Ed when you introduced the Title IX resolution that's still in play with the Biden administration. So tell everybody about that resolution and what motivated you to do it, and where do things stand now?
Yes, great. This is a very topical issue. In September of 2022, I proposed a resolution, and this was in response to the Biden administration putting forward proposed regulations to redefine sex-based harassment and to redefine Title IX to be based on gender identity rather than biological sex. And so this affects so many things, everything from language usage by teachers and peers and parents to the big one is athletics and women's sports. So in September of 2022, put a resolution forward. At the bare minimum, the goal was to say districts should not be making any changes yet because these regulations are simply in a proposed status. They're going to be fought. Ohio's Attorney General, Dave Yost, has said that he would fight them, and 25, 26 other state attorneys general have done the same. So in the resolution, we really tried to make some strong statements about, the essence, the truth of male and female, and that it's a central component of academics and education. So that passed in December of that year. And I think that was big. That sent a letter out to every district, every elected board member, every superintendent in every district in the state, conveying the status of these regulations and conveying the state board's position that we oppose what the Biden administration was in the process of attempting to do. So I really think it provided a great deal of support for local districts, which sometimes they might be, some of the board members, might not be as equipped going up against some attorneys that may have different views or different agendas to resist and say, no, we're going to hold the line on this. So since that time, just recently, a couple of weeks ago, the U.S. Department of Education, the Biden administration has actually promulgated, they've gone forward with promulgating that rule. And attorneys general from all over the country, including here in Ohio, have sued. And so to stop that from taking effect. So I think this is going to be a contentious battle. I think it's going to go up to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, and I think districts, should hold the line. They should do what they know to be right for their students.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And actually, I just saw an article yesterday that Moms for Liberty joined forces with a couple of other groups, and they have filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration for the Title IX as well. So hopefully that will be successful. Now, when you issued the resolution, when the State Board of Ed issues opinions, if you will, is it accurate to say that for the most part, since Ohio is a local control state when it comes to education, that the guidelines with regard to curriculum given by the state school board are more like suggestions rather than mandates? If not, then how exactly does that work?
When it comes to things like the model curriculum, you're correct. And so the state board used to have control over model curriculum. We don't any longer. Now that's with the new Department of Education Workforce Development. But that is correct, that they're essentially, as the name suggests, it's a model, it's a guide. Now I think a lot of times districts will use it as if every jot and tittle is a requirement. So I do think they're very important for that reason. And if the state's going to produce a model curriculum, it ought to be good. But yes, it is a suggestion. It is a guide.
So by most standardized metrics, Ohio urban education is failing. And we're spending a fortune on this failure. For example, in East Cleveland, 23% of kids passed the fourth grade proficiency for ELA, 15% in fifth grade, 13% in sixth grade. And even these numbers are spectacular compared to the math proficiency scores. In seventh grade math, 2%. So 1 in 50 students passed the proficiency. So from your standpoint on the State Board of Ed, what was done or is being done to address these kids' academic failure, and why are they failing?
Sure. So this is obviously a very difficult and complex subject, and I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. But these things called academic distress commissions were put into place, and they would require, and this was based on a law that the General Assembly passed. I believe it was in 2021. And they would require districts that at that time got an F, their overall report card grade was an F. Now it's switched to stars. So if they got essentially a 1 star, then they're required to go into this academic distress commission and come up with an academic improvement plan, which would then be approved by the Department of Education, now the new department. And so there were 3 districts that participated in that over the last couple of years. You mentioned East Cleveland, Lorain City Schools, and Youngstown City Schools. I think the idea is good. The idea is to try and hold their feet to the fire and create some level of accountability. And these plans that the districts are required to produce are intended to do just that, to say, okay, these are the areas that we need to work on. This is our plan for achieving it. Well, I'm not an expert on this, and there aren't any districts in my district that fall into this. I don't have intimate knowledge. From what I can tell, when I look at their plans, a lot of times they seem to be aspirational, they seem to be nice, but they seem to be short on the concrete of how can we actually do this. So they'll say we're going to increase this score by so much, or we're going to decrease absenteeism by so much. But as far as concrete ways to do that, I think a lot of times they're lacking. Like I said, I don't have all the answers for how you improve. I do believe that school choice, I do believe that competition, I do believe that empowering local levels of decision making, and just kind of unleashing, unshackling, hopefully good leaders at the local level to go and take the bull by the horns and do what they need to do. Philosophically, I mean, I think that's best. But ultimately, when it comes to this issue, the schools can't do everything. And sadly, I think that parental engagement and local community engagement and involvement obviously plays a part, but I don't have all the answers.
Well, unfortunately, neither do I. One of my biggest concerns is within the curriculum, we are seeing so much bias towards multiple groups of people, with the woke ideology, with teachers teaching, the 1619 Project, not the truth, not the 1776 Project, or even just presenting it as, okay, this is one group's idea, this is another group's idea. Do you think it would be possible ever for the State Board of Ed or the new workforce development to actually do an audit of our curriculum through the state, or would it have to be at local control to see exactly how much bias is in the curriculum?
That's a great question. I don't know what the current law would allow as far as an audit is concerned. My sense is to undertake such an audit, there has to be legal authority to do so, and I think that would come from the General Assembly, and I don't know that type of authority is there. The General Assembly, a lot of times people, they don't realize, does so much when it comes to education policy. I mean, number one, the General Assembly is the one that spends the money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's first and foremost. But all of these things that get created, from academic distress commissions to the state report card, so many of these things are initiatives, they're creations of the General Assembly. Now, in many ways, I think they should be, because those are the folks that we send to Columbus on our behalf. Those are our representatives, those are elected folks, as opposed to now in this new Department of Education workforce, these folks are appointed. I think it's much more opaque than the State Board of Education. But even the State Board of Education, which is elected, it's a regulatory body. That's really what it is. And so I like that legislators are the ones that should be making these decisions. Getting back to your question, I mean, that obviously is a initiative that if the General Assembly wanted to do, I think they could do, but that's not something that exists today. The ability to audit. I mean, I will say, Lisa, that I'm a little bit wary of having sort of more layers of kind of top-down state oversight.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand why. It's because we're concerned about what's happening, and we're concerned about, okay, parents are there, parents want to do their job, parents want to protect their children, have quality academics, common sense values that probably 90% of parents would agree with. And sometimes they're running up against a stone wall, and what can they do, right? I think that's the nature of your question. So I would absolutely be supportive of anything that can try to determine, okay, what is being smuggled in here? You know, what type of non-academic or essentially bias is claiming to uproot bias, but a lot of times it's doing the opposite of that, right? So how can we get to the heart of it and get rid of it?
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, and you're right. It's taking legislatures passing bills such as the SAFE Act bill, the Save Women's Sports Act, HB 68. One
Absolutely.
that's near to my heart is the Parents' Rights Bill, HB 8, which I've been working with Representative Swearingen to fix some of the language in it. Hopefully, it's going to be passed this month out of the Senate and gone to the governor to sign it, providing he doesn't veto it. But it's sad that we're having to have legislation that, as a parent, we're having to ask the legislators to protect our rights because the schools are just not doing what they're supposed to do, and it's sad. So I appreciate your effort up there at the state board. Like I said, I've been to a couple of meetings. It's kind of crazy up there, and I know it's not easy being an elected official, especially right now with regards to education. So let's pivot a little bit. You are now county commissioner for Madison County. What made you decide to run for that role?
Yeah, so here in Madison County, it's just such a wonderful county and such a strategic location. Columbus is one of the fastest growing places in the world, believe it or not. It's the fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States, and in terms of business investment and development, it's actually number 1 in the world. Madison County, a lot of people who live in Columbus think that we're kind of way out there, but from our capital seat, in London to downtown Columbus, I mean, it's barely 30 minutes. So we're right there. I think there are a lot of opportunities, which I want the county to be able to capitalize on, but I also think there's a real risk that we could just get swallowed up. And between Columbus and Springfield, we could just become basically a big blob, an extension of these more urban areas. So that's my motivation, to preserve what makes this county so unique, which is certainly our strategic location. And a lot of folks like to avail themselves of what's over in Columbus, but they don't want it literally in their backyard. So that's a motivation of mine. And a big topic is the solar issue, and I can get into that more if you'd like. But Madison County has become the capital for solar development in Ohio, and that's alarming to me.
So tell me about that. Why is it alarming to you?
Yeah, so we've lost more acres of farmland, not just prime farmland, and you hear that, but it's not just a trite slogan. And actually, there's different soil types, and most of the 10,000 acres that we've lost to solar in Madison County are on some of the finest, most fertile soil types. So it's a real concern. About 10,000 acres. There's a proposal for another 6,000 acre project. that would bring the total acreage that we've lost to solar in Madison to 16,000. That's like 8% of our total tillable land. And if you look around the state, that would bring the total state farmland that's been lost to solar to about 100,000 acres. So we'd be at about 15%. So to me, if you're someone that says we need more solar, which I'm not, I have questions about it. I have questions about the technology, the underlying philosophy of why we're doing this and why we're doing it on farmland. But even if you were someone that said, I think this is good, I want to have some here, I like the government revenue or any of those sorts of things, you have to reckon with the fact that other counties have not had any projects, like Greene County. Their one proposal was denied by the Power Siting Board, citing public opposition. Public opposition here has been huge. It's been overwhelming. I won for county commissioner running largely on that issue. And yet the Power Siting Board just approved the fourth project, actually the fifth, if you include one that dips into Franklin County. So to me, we're just losing a lot of our farmable land, which is going to impact our agricultural economy, impact our economy at large, make farming more challenging. All of the supports and services and industry that goes into serving existing farms becomes more challenging. And I just question why people like Bill Gates, who own the 6,000 acres that this latest project just went in on, why they are targeting some of the most fertile land in America, in the world, rather than places that you can't use for anything else, like rooftops or industrial buildings or the sides of mountains or deserts. So that I'm concerned on so many levels.
It is scary, and I'm friends with a lady in Madison County who has been leading this fight to stop this project. One of the things that baffles me is doing some research, and many articles that I found said, "Oh yeah, solar farms are safe. You can still farm on them." But then I read other articles that say once those solar farms go up, the soil is ruined by the chemicals that are in those solar panels. Have you heard of anything like that, or can you elaborate more on that?
What I can tell you is there's just a lot of questions. A lot of these, certainly in Madison County, these industrial solar plants haven't been up for very long. I've been pushing for testing of soils, testing of water. You'd think that the EPA, which has a seat on the Power Siting Board, would be leading the charge, would actually be doing that. When we go to them and say, will you test the water? Can we have a baseline? They say it's not needed, it's not necessary. And to me, that's deeply concerning, because in the future, if we have an event like happened in Denton, Texas, where you have thousands of acres of solar panels destroyed by an act of God, by a hailstorm or something like that, you don't have a baseline. So, I'm speaking with the current commissioners and pushing very hard for them to take the bull by the horns and to pay, if necessary, out of some of the many millions of dollars that supposedly we're eventually going to get from these things, to quickly go and test soils, test water, so that we have a baseline and so that we know and we can compare to what happens in the future. But I think there's just a lot of unknowns. There's certainly toxic chemicals that make up these panels. So there's questions about leaching. Could that happen? It's tough to say right now. I don't know of anything that shows one way or the other, because they're fairly new.
Yeah, it's very scary to me that with all this Green New Deal stuff, which that includes solar farms, wind farms, we see horrible pictures of many birds killed by the wind farms, whales, even when they have the wind farms out in the ocean off the coast of, I think it's Maine, in that area. Whales have been turning up dead because of this. I don't understand the big rush at all. I'm putting my tinfoil hat on, and I, there's something going on there that we just, it's okay to slow down. I just wish they would realize it's okay to slow down. I'm not a scientist by any sense of the word, But Ohio doesn't get a whole lot of sunshine. So why would we want solar panels, that many of them in Ohio? I mean, I see people have them on their homes, which is fine if you want to do that for your home, but to ruin good farmland and the way the world is going, we need to be self-sufficient to be able to feed ourselves. It baffles me.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the reasons there's a bullseye on Ohio is just because we have so much open land and it's flat. So I don't, that's the reason. And so to me, it's up to us to say, okay, this isn't good policy, even at a national level. And if the federal government's not going to help us and they're going to push it, we have to stand up for ourselves, and I think for food security at the national level as a whole. About the tinfoil hat thing, people would ask me, so I would talk about the project that I was proposing, the one that wasn't a done deal yet, and technically still is not. That's the Oak Run project. That's 6,000 acres owned by Bill Gates. So I would often call that the Bill Gates solar proposal. And people would say, who cares? What does it matter that it's Bill Gates? It's like, really? I mean, this is a guy that says, he questions if we have too many people, and actually outright says, we have too many people. We need to do things to lower the population. I mean, when people tell you what they're thinking out loud,
Mm-hmm.
I think you should listen, and I think you should trust what they're telling you, especially if it's something like that. So I think asking these questions about why here, why so much, why so rapidly, why not areas that aren't taking valuable farmland out of production, those are the exact type of questions we should be asking.
Agreed. So, Ohio's economic development initiatives. Can you explain, as you indicated on your campaign platform, what does managed growth mean to you?
Yeah. So managed growth to me means I think you want some growth. I think living in a community, no community is staying exactly the same, just like no person, no organism. It's either getting better or it's getting worse. It's either growing at least modestly or it's shrinking. And I think for communities, you do want at least modest population growth. But I want to do things that allow for modest population growth and allow for the maximum amount of property rights, but recognize that there is a limit. It's not absolute. When someone sells their land to a major development group who wants to come and put different types of housing and multi-story, multi-family units, that can fundamentally transform and change, I think not for the better, a community like Madison County overnight. So I think we want to be very strategic and very careful about, yes, making sure that we have growth, but making sure that it's the right type of growth, making sure that the communities and local citizens are kept informed, that they have an adequate ability to inform the process, that their views and their wishes are not just heard, but really taken into account. So a lot of what I want to do in the commissioner's office has to do with transparency, with accessibility, things like having our meetings actually available for viewing, both in real time and after the fact, having at least one meeting a month at a time when most people can make, hopefully in the evening, versus, once a week at 8 o'clock in the morning when most people are, going to work and school,
Right.
things like that. So, I mean, I can go on and on about managed growth, but it's basically just a certain amount of growth, but not exploding population wise or in any other way, and trying to see, what's coming down the pike. How can we plan for the future, but do it in a way that still makes this a very attractive, family-friendly place to live.
Very good. So if people in Madison County want to learn more about solar farms and your battle with this, where can they get that information?
So on my Facebook page, which I'm trying to keep up with, I've been putting updates on the latest with the Oak Run project, and that's the biggest one as it stands today. So the commissioners have said no more industrial solar plants in Madison County going forward. I could give you a lot of wonky details about where this other project stands, but the long and short of it is that there's the 6,000 acre project is before the power siting board. The two of the three commissioners have opposed it. The commissioner that I defeated in the Republican primary, he supported it. He has since voted to appeal the power siting board's decision. So I don't know exactly what his thought process is at this point, but he has joined the other two commissioners to now say the county wants you to reverse your decision of approving this. And obviously I'm really working hard to try to see that through and make it happen. So that's where it stands. And we're waiting for the decision from the power siting board on whether they'll accept the appeal. If not, the appeal would lead to a retrial essentially, and I'd be very involved in that. If they don't, then we'll be appealing to the Supreme Court, the
Okay.
Ohio Supreme Court, to ask them to take it up. But yeah, I'm posting updates on my Facebook page, which is Madison County Commissioner-elect Brendan Shea. You can put that into a search engine or directly on Facebook. So I'm just trying to be a conduit of timely information for all things county. And right now, this project is probably the most pressing.
Well, yes, you've got a very daunting task ahead of you. Again, I thank you for all the wonderful work you've done on the State Board of Ed and applaud you for what you're doing now and taking this on. Keep us updated. We'll get you back when we have some more updates. Thank you, Brendan Shea. This has been Straight Shot Politics.